Alliance. It's a real pleasure to welcome Matt Button, who's the manager of Big Brothers Big Sisters. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah.
It's all right. Yeah, no, I'm really keen to find out about what you're doing here in Christchurch. And before we started recording, we were talking about the numbers and the great work that's happening. Yeah. But before we get into that, I always love to find the backstory of people to kind of build up to why is it that you do what you do. So if you don't mind just telling us a little bit about where you're from.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Yeah, so, I brought up in Nelson predominantly and then moved to Christchurch when I was about 10 years old, and through my dad's work we had to move around quite a bit, and so it was constantly having to make new friends and go to new schools. And
what sort of work did he do?
He's an Anglican vicar.
Oh, okay.
And so back in the, I suppose, 70s and 80s and even into the 90s, regularly you'd only stay in a church for maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and more recently it's become a longer stints, so that required a fair amount of moving around.
And what are your memories of the early days, like Nelson? 10 years old is old enough to remember, right?
Yeah.
So what, take us back to, 4 and 5 years old, like what sort of things did you enjoy?
Yeah, I've always loved cricket and sport. I see cricket straight away because I have memories of watching cricket with my grandparents, and this is in Nelson, and just loving playing cricket and watching it, and football as well. My dad's English, and so he follows the Norwich. He's from Norwich, so we enjoy following the football as well. So I had a great love of sport, but also picked up music pretty young as well. I've got two older brothers, and they learnt the piano, and I felt a bit envious, so I just self-taught and eventually got lessons, but I remember teaching myself, and it's really interesting because, of course, I wonder, both my brothers gave up piano, but I'm still playing and still love it, and and I picked up guitar since as well, so and play various instruments. So I
wonder if that's partly because you wanted to do it, the attitude of it, whereas if your parents say, right, you're going to piano lesson, you must do it. It's quite a different thing from, well, I love the sound, I want to play.
It's an interesting thing you pick up there, that the idea of choice, and one of the things about having a father in the Anglican Church in terms of his job was there's a huge obligation that is associated with that, both on my mother as the vicar's wife and on my father in terms of all the things that they had to do. The expectations from our churches are full of, I'm going to call them volunteers, or people who aren't paid to be there, but they sort of feel quite invested in the place, and they expect a lot from their leader as the paid person. And that idea of obligation is really quite interesting because it impacted me when I thought about how often my dad had to be there or had to be here, do this and do that. And as a young person, as a son, feeling like maybe I missed out a bit on having good times with Dad, because he always had to be doing stuff, and that's really significant when I push that way forward.
There is a lot of obligation in a way, isn't there? Like there's going to be committee meetings on a Tuesday, and there's going to be, I got to visit this person on a Thursday, and there's a funeral tomorrow, so I got to prepare for it.
That's right.
There's a lot involved, isn't there?
You can't really let people down, and Monday was his day off, which meant he was working the whole weekend. And so, that was a significant thing for me, and for my brothers, actually, in the sense that maybe we wanted Dad to be around a bit more often than he was.
So does that tie in, well, let's get to it later, I wonder, because we're going to be talking about mentoring and having figures like that. You can trace back that there was a big influence there. Because I would think as well, like a pastor, a minister or something, they're kind of pouring out to the other people in the community. And maybe sometimes it is hard to focus on your own family unit.
I think that's probably fair, again, due to those sort of responsibilities or obligations elsewhere. And it's quite difficult talking about your father in terms of saying he wasn't around as much as you wanted him to be, because I think he's a stellar performer, like he's incredibly conscientious. And so in one sense I don't want to bring him down by saying he didn't do a good enough job, but there's no doubt I just wish he was around more often when we were young. And
well, it's a statement of how much you loved and respected
him, right? That's right.
Yeah, but the nature of the occupation.
Yeah.
I can see that.
That's right. And the stuff about obligation, the reason I say it's significant is because pushing right through into the rest of my life, choice has been, the idea of choice is very significant. Trying not to work out of obligation, but working with choice in life. That's become a real theme of mine. The idea of why volunteering is a great thing. Like, you choose to volunteer, and so you look after your volunteers so they continue to be able to choose their role, not feel obligated in their role, guilt associated with the role, but trying to free them from that. And that was something that I felt very connected to as I moved through my teenage years and then into my, I studied psychology and
I think you're right as well, just to pick up on that. And the way this format works is basically we go down all kinds of rabbit holes all the time. So just picking up on that though about volunteering, like, it just strikes me because I just volunteered at TEDx Christchurch. So it's, an event, lots of people, wonderful event. And if I'd been sitting in the audience, I wouldn't have experienced it the way that I did as a volunteer, because I was there welcoming people. Hey, welcome to TEDx. Great to see you. Come over this way. And then I was behind in the green room helping the speakers before they went on stage. So it was like I saw a side of the whole experience that I never would have if I hadn't put myself out there to volunteer. And I wrote a thing about it afterwards because it really struck me, like, because I bought a ticket to go, but I think I got so much more by having volunteered.
By being involved in that way. It's very different perspective, isn't it? You see things quite differently. And again, that experience of yours is interesting to reflect on, the choice that you made to do it, that you probably didn't have to do it.
No.
You probably put your hand up, which is what volunteering kind of concept is.
Well, I'd actually gone so far as to buy a ticket to be there. I should have been in the seats. But then I was reflecting and thinking, actually, it'd be kind of fun to help them out. And so I got in contact with Kyla, and that's what happened. So it's quite cool.
There's a real beauty in that, a real beauty in the idea of being able to give, give of yourself and do it freely without obligation. I think one of the challenges in life is there's so many demands on us, in terms of needs in our community. So many needs, and you want to be able to think that you can make a free choice to do it, but the reality is sometimes you can feel guilted or obligated into volunteering. So I think it's a really significant, I'm going to call it a gift in life, when you can actually look past your obligations and look to the things that you really choose to do. Now, of course, there are times where we all need to step up, like earthquakes and crisis, when you just have to get involved regardless. But there are also other seasons when actually, no, I can make a choice here. I want to get involved in this. As you did with your kids.
And actually, it's the reverse as well. Make the choice not to get involved.
Exactly.
And a good no is really important, to be able to say a good no. I think.
I think that's again a significant word for me. The word no, in terms of reacting against obligation, is being able to say, you might think I'm obliged to do this, but I'm going to say no because I have other, I choose to say no, regardless of how you might see me. If I say no, I choose to say no anyway. And again, looking way forward into mentoring, that becomes a significant part of that. How do we encourage our volunteers who say yes to also say no?
Yes.
And we can talk about that further down the track.
Yeah, that'd be good. I'll put we have show notes to this. So I'll put a link to another episode I did recently. It's only about 6 minutes.
Okay.
And I called it Say No to Say Yes. Because the idea is, anytime you say yes to something, you're actually saying no to something else, because time is valuable, right?
That's right.
And there's this wonderful proverb from China, I think, which says, if you chase 2 rabbits, you'll catch none.
Right.
And I've looked at it, there's opportunities are popping up. I got to do this, got to do that, but you're not going to get anything if you can't be deliberate and strategic. So
there's so much to do.
So much.
You've got to be. It's the art of saying no. It's an art to learn for all of us.
So coming back to your own life and taking us through, you mentioned you were moving. You were the new kid in school quite a lot. Like how was that?
I remember being about 6 years old, I think, and going to a school and on the first day being in tears.
Right.
And I remember going to intermediate as well, early days, and finding that hard too. So I certainly didn't find it easy, those changes. And I think that again informed me going forward, this idea of I really love the idea of helping people to feel welcome and known and not alone, and that I think is fed from a bit of that experience of moving quite a bit, as well as my teenage years and the stuff that I experienced there as well. So if I push through into those teenage years, then I had some stuff, as all of us would reflect out on our mid to late teenage years. There's stuff that goes down, like you can't avoid it. It's just life. It happens, and things that you don't have fond memories of, and they're incredibly formative. And for me, if I'm just to sum up without having to go into too much detail about the stuff that happened for me, it was all about feeling alone and abandoned, and by myself, and essentially. I was at home, I was well supported, I did, mum and dad were around, we weren't short of money, we had enough money to go around, I had older brothers who were pretty cool, and nevertheless I felt very alone, and that's a horrible feeling. And that time of probably 2 or 3 years of feeling like I basically just had to forge my own way in life, again, it's been really significant in terms of, as I've gone forward, going, how do I help people to feel not abandoned, not alone, to feel known. I still remember a guy talking, this is only about probably 15 years ago, I remember him doing a talk, and as he did this talk, I remember him saying one of the most significant things in life is to feel known, or feel that you're known and accepted for who you are. And it sounds trite, doesn't it? I mean, it's the word, to be accepted for who you are just sounds like just a throwaway kind of thing. There's nothing, I mean, that's the closest thing that is something completely true, is it is a great thing to feel known and accepted. And of course the complete flip is the opposite, to feel abandoned is the for me and for many of us, it's just the most awful experience in the world. It's interesting, when I do this podcast, there end up being echoes between people's interviews. Right. So I interviewed a guy named David Clifford relatively recently, about 2 months ago. He was actually a TEDx speaker, and so I heard him talk, and he was talking about education in the future. And what it would mean to actually look holistically at children. And we talked in that interview about the fact that the biggest gift that a child can be given by their family and their peers and support is knowing that they're accepted and knowing that they're loved, like that there is a place for you. And if you can get that right, then all of the other stuff, working on our multiplication tables and here's our spelling list, like none of it matters if you can get that foundational stuff right. And so it really resonates with what you're talking about. So foundational, and all the new kind of neuroscience stuff coming out around early childhood and those first 1,000 days, and all this stuff that we hear regularly recently around attachment is all saying that same thing. You've got to get the foundation attachments right, which are giving those messages of nurturing and care that make you feel accepted and loved. And I experienced that. Like I definitely did. Like it's not that I felt like I missed out on that, and yet I still somehow, as so many of us, when we individuate through our teenage years from our parents, then we're kind of left in no man's land for a while, going, well, who am I? And can I support myself? Is my self-talk okay? That I'm okay? Is my self-talk I'm okay, or is my self-talk I'm not okay? And my self-talk was I'm not okay. Right. I'm a bad person, or I'm a weak person, so that became really. So was this sort of end of high school time that this was going on? I would say end of high school through to probably 16 through to about 18, those years. So going into the university years. And what was it that helped you sort of move past that, or? Yeah, that's a good question. It's a good question because I feel like there's stuff that happened then that helped me to move through it. But actually, probably more recently, I've moved through it more than back then.
Yeah.
But I think that in terms of this word, I like to use the word redemptive process. Like there is a kind of a fixing up of things that that happens slowly over time. It's not an overnight type thing. And so I think the nature of what I decided to do with my life was where that started to change.
Right.
I would just throw in here that as well as my vocation and the work I've done and study, that there was a really key person in my early 20s. He was a guy, probably 70 or so, I suppose he was, at 60s when I knew him well. And I'd just go around and see him every couple of weeks, and we'd hang out for an hour or two and just talk. And what I think was so remarkable about him was simply that he showed me that even at his age, there are a lot of struggles and battles, internal battles and conflict and doubt within himself, that for some reason, even being in my early 20s, I just assumed adults had it sorted in their head, and that my head was way too much in conflict and too much self-doubt. But to have someone at that other end of life
to be vulnerable with you and share
that's
openly.
That's the word. It's vulnerability. He was extremely vulnerable with me, and in fact, here's a classic. It's just a little memory which I just loved about this guy, and I think it also echoed some of how I was. Was he would say he loved Elvis Presley, and the old record player. He'd put Elvis Presley on every now and then, and when he did, he'd just start weeping. He just so loved the music. It just all his emotion just poured out when he listened to Elvis Presley. Now, I never had that experience, but I think that's some of that vulnerability that he was an open man.
Right. He was willing to cry in front of you, right?
Willing to cry in front of me. He would cry in front of me regularly, and yeah, that was really significant for me. Just that kind of message.
Yeah. So how had you met him? What was the initial relationship?
Church. Yeah. So the church that I was involved with at the time, and actually had a lot of my friends who had come through youth group and at my church together, and had kind of moved away and out of the city, out of the country, and there just seemed to be very few of my supports left, and so that's where.
So did he sort of take you under his wing?
Yeah, not intentionally by any mean. I think I was drawn to him before he was drawn to me in that way, but it was really significant. Paul was his name, and I can't really actually entirely recall how we kind of got underway. I think even seeing him at church, he had the most terrible singing voice in the world. He'd be singing these songs in church, and monotone, like just terrible, absolutely awful voice. We could stand next to him and dear Paul, what a terrible voice. But singing with all his heart, right. I just love this idea of being able to have no shame. And not looking around him and going off flap, I've got a crap voice, but instead just giving everything and being vulnerable around the people around him.
Sounds like a great guy. I love that, put on some Elvis Presley and start to cry.
That's right. There's just so little cool. that would draw you to him though, in so many ways. And again, that's a great thing.
So what was the biggest thing that you learned from him, do you think?
As I say, I think it's predominantly around that we all have burdens within us, challenges and struggles within us, and no one's got it sorted out.
I often think that, and particularly in the last 10 years when the Facebook images and the social media, the reality is that person's life is probably not as good as their profile picture, and sometimes we assume too much. And the reality is that all of us have something that's going on, whether it's a health thing or a family thing or a work thing, to be to be human with each other is to recognize that and to really listen to people, isn't it? To be open to those conversations.
You just summed up why I really find Facebook, why I'm not really on Facebook very often. I mean, I'm not saying I'm not on there at all, but I'm not on there much at all, and I don't follow people other than my family and a very few friends for that reason. I think authentic living is about being vulnerable with one another and sharing the great successes, as you always see on Facebook, but also the sharing the trials and
But that's maybe part of the new generation. Will be part of it is being vulnerable on Facebook. I've seen some people share some of their deep things, and it's like, they get way more likes than the beautiful photo on this isn't working and I'm not sure what to do next.
People connect with that, don't they?
Yeah,
really do.
They do. Well, ultimately we're relational creatures, so it's yeah. So just talk us through then. We're doing well. We're up to your early 20s, I think. Had you known what you were going to study, at university?
It's kind of interesting actually. Through high school, I was definitely good at maths and accounting, and it seemed pretty clear to me that accounting was a good way to go. But there were 8 a.m. lectures at university, and that was enough to put me off. So I gave up the accounting thing, and because of having such a tumultuous time through then, I also picked up psychology. I was kind of interested in it, but not sure where to go with it. And I also want to do forestry as well, which is a bit random. But anyway, so everything else kind of eventually just paled away and ended up just being psychology. I found myself more interested in the material and stayed with it because it was relevant to me exactly where I was at that time.
Right. So you were self-diagnosing, huh?
I was, particularly the stuff around developmental and social psychology. I found that fascinating, the nature of dynamics of people and how they relate to each other, and so that became my thing. And I went through and did a master's degree, and my thesis was all about the costs and benefits of adolescent friendships, which interestingly was exactly some of the stuff that I'd struggled with over the years, and so that became very relevant. Even though it was to be honest, it was a pretty shoddy thesis. I'm not really very good at being a writer, but at the same time, I think it was quite cathartic. And that led very naturally then for me to then go and do some youth work. Following that, to want to work with young people. And I knew I was really clear. I wanted to help them know that we all have problems and we have issues and struggles in life, and that we just don't have to do them alone. It was as simple as that. And so I thought somehow in the work that I'm doing, I want to be able to work alongside young people and build relationships with them and help them to experience not being alone, and to know that they can be honest. So I can even think back to a funny thing that I said to my youth group once, when I was trying being vulnerable with them. I said, I know when I get stressed, because in my 20s I'd get boils on my neck, and they would come up when I was stressed, but when I wasn't stressed they weren't there. And I sort of picked and noticed this, and I remember telling my young people this. And so it kind of became a long-standing joke with them whenever they saw boils on my neck. Oh, Matt's stressed again. But I love that. I was able to offer them these kind of doors and openings of look at your own body. Look at what's going on with your body. If you've got stress signs, are there things that might pop up for you, triggers for you? I really enjoyed that. So I got into running this youth group in a church for about 8 years.
Right. And so that's a direct link to the study that you'd done, this is day-to-day dealing with young people, and your thesis had been on young people. So
that's right.
That must have been quite satisfying as well, to take the academic study and have it be reality.
Very much so. That's right. And I think the beauty of it was that you had the opportunity in a youth group setting to week by week just hang out with young people and just do stuff together, play games together, have good yarns, eat together, and just to ask good questions on, get them thinking, get them reflecting. Obviously from a church perspective, faith perspective, we're wanting to develop and grow their faith and get them to think about issues of faith.
Well, it comes back to this fundamental: who are you and why do you think what you think, which is what you'd gone through as well. We've all gone through it, but to be there to support people.
Walk alongside them through some of that journey, and just getting them reflecting was one of my goals in my work. Was I don't have to kind of move or change people, but just to get them to reflect on who they are and to get them honest about who they are, and that kind of authentic experience of I know who I am and I can express who I am, be who I am, sort of thing, even if there's struggles and battles within that. I'm okay with that.
Can I ask you a question? Because I don't think I've had someone who studied psychology, to a master's level. When you reflect on, you probably looked into the past and the history of psychology and some of the early, I'm thinking Freud and I'll get the names wrong, but Jung and all these people. Yeah. Were there any people that really stood out at you as like they were the real pioneers who did amazing things?
Yeah, the first thing I'd say is the opposite. Is that there was quite a strong movement at the University of Canterbury down the behaviourism side. So Skinner, the behavioural psychologist, I was very resistant to this idea of conditioning and positive, negative reinforcement and punishment, all these kind of words. I found them so unhelpful. I was really resistant to that, and much more open to some of the Freudian, Jungian type stuff. I felt resistant to that too on some level. I think I was somehow anti-sexual stuff. I was like, no, he's too sexualized, surely. I mean, I really didn't know. I was young and very early in my academic kind of career. I didn't really know what I was doing, but I felt more affinity to that. And so, I'd say I'd see Freud definitely as a real pioneer, and Jung. Certainly Jung's one that I've come to really enjoy as life's gone on. But through university, the one that meant the most to me was a guy called Erik Erikson. He talked about the stages of life development.
Okay.
And he talked about that at different stages of life we have to learn certain stuff. And he called it a crisis. It's not crisis as we might look at it, but a crisis, it might be like identity versus isolation. Might be through your sort of teenage years, you're going to be isolated or you're going to build an identity, and you have to try and get through that crisis and grow and learn from there. And there's different ones right through the lifespan. And I found them really fascinating. I really like that idea that actually there are at different stages of life, there's stuff to learn all the way through life to grow with. So I found that really, and that really formed a lot of my thinking, and when I was doing my thesis as well.
Right.
Erikson's thinking around, when I was looking at adolescent friendships, I was thinking with the framework of Erik Erikson underneath that.
So is that kind of like stages of life that as you move through, there's new things to learn?
That's right.
Right.
Yep, and as I say, it's put in the sense of a crisis that you're either, I wish I could remember them all, but even right through the very early stages, like the first year of life and 3 to 5, there's different crises going through, and then childhood one, then a teenage one, and then going into early adulthood. All about relation to intimacy versus something I would have.
Well, the common one that people talk about is midlife crisis, right? You kind of halfway through your career is like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? You know, which is I think there's some truth to that. For me anyway, I studied law at Canterbury, and then I became a lawyer. And then after quite a long time of doing the type of law that I was doing, it was very much am I happy with this? I'm helping these rich people make more money. Is this really how I want to spend my time? And then for us, it was like, what country are we in? We were living in Sydney. It was like, we want to get back to New Zealand. So it was quite a formative moment of moving country, switching job, having a different focus in my career of what I was doing.
I would say I had the same experience, and I'd use the language of it being the journey inward. I think the first 20 years of your career, you can potentially see yourself as being quite external, seeking external rewards, still trying to find your place in the world. And you may have already found it, but it's more external. And then as life goes on, you go, actually, those things that externally are rewarding are not actually deeply rewarding. And so there's going inward and finding what are those things that are more internally rewarding. And for you, it could be doing these things right now.
Why not?
You might get a lot more sense of reward from this than the pay packet or whatever.
Well, just to echo that, the way I've read about it is it's CV qualities. In the first half of your life, it's like I got this degree and I'm really good at this and this, and I'm a computer programmer or whatever. Like look at me type of things. Like qualifications. And then the second half of life. It's a different focus, but it's when people are giving my eulogy, what are the qualities? Like they're not going to say he was really good at Excel. It's going to be he was hopefully kind, generous, helped others. And that ultimately all the other stuff that's in your CV, they're not going to read that stuff out. at your funeral. So it's that priorities as well, isn't it?
It is.
And then once you realize that,
yeah.
what are you focusing on with your life?
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah, yeah.
So you're doing that, working with the church and youth groups and things, and then just bring us up to speed in terms of the work you're doing now. And I'd love to hear about what exactly you're doing, and
So the transition was really quite interesting, and it's relevant, the transition. So doing youth work in the church, a lot of group work, and I found that standing up in front of groups, talking to them, I could do it. Again, it's a little bit kind of like first after life material if I can deliver this, but I don't find it I don't enjoy it particularly, and can find it quite stressful. The work I found the most rewarding was the one-to-one relational work that I might do with a small group of young people.
Right.
And I mean small group as in individually, with about 5 or 6 of them, working with them. And so that really spurred me to think, I know what I want to do next. And a guy got in touch with me and said, we're starting up a little pilot mentoring program at Breen's Intermediate over in the northwest of Christchurch. And we're just getting a few people who just mentor one child each. And so we went down, and I was in my role still as a youth worker, and I got called down to the school, and the principal was there, and she said, okay, great. Okay, so look, there's this kid here who's got a problem, this one and this one. So Matt, you have that one. Paul, you have that one. That my mentor guy here to avoid, and you have one. Here's the phone number. Away you go. I'm like, well, what are we being asked to do here? And essentially it was mentoring, but I didn't really.
There wasn't much training or
nothing,
background.
Nothing.
Yeah.
And of course, back in that day, no police checks or anything. There was nothing. It was just go for it.
Yeah.
And after about 9 months, in fact, there were about 6 or 8 of us who initially signed up, but by the time we got to the end of the first year, there was only me left, and all the rest had dropped away. And I'm not claiming any that I was particularly special at it. It's just that I was paid to do it. And so it's easier for me to sustain it. But the other guys had no support. And even the people running this thing, they'd dropped off. They had a new person take it over, and they dropped off. So there was no one running it. It was a joke. But by the end of the year, I really started to, even though the mentoring I didn't find hugely rewarding, I knew that this is what I wanted to move forward with. And so out of interest, there was a local research study done into the youth needs in the northwest of Christchurch, and someone said, so from the upshot of that was someone saying we need a mentoring program for boys, particularly, and so the city council put up a little bit of funding, and away we went from there, and started this trust, which was initially called the Northwest Mentoring Trust, and with a goal of helping young people through transitional stages, providing the support for them, providing those sort of relationships. But they're all those words out there, at the top that you can sort of peel off. At the heart of it, and this never changed, it's about kids being accepted and known and feeling that someone cares about them. You don't need to go any further than mentoring. We can look at outcomes. We can think about all the great things down the track that kids who are mentored might get because they've had a mentor. And we've got stories of that. But I could go and talk to a child today who's got a mentor, and the most significant thing I see is a smile on their face when they're talking about their mentor, and that young person feels known.
There's a real impact, isn't there, that they're having?
At a very foundational level. Not necessarily one as tangible that you can say, look, I can see how they're doing better here, here, and here, but you know that they feel that there's something they're feeling, there's something they know, something relational. That's why I wanted to set it up, and I wasn't the only one to set it up, but that's why I've been involved since then.
So how's it developed since then? And what's the relationship with Big Brothers Big Sisters?
Yeah, so
how does that work?
So after about 3 years, we realised we were getting volunteers from all over the city coming to do mentoring in the northwest of town, and it just seemed stupid. So we then affiliated with Big Brothers Big Sisters, and then started to mentor all across the city. So Big Brothers Big Sisters started in 1905, about 115 years old, just about the same age as Rotary, actually exactly the same age. Both came out of American cities, and both were started by lawyers. And in this case, a guy called Ernest Coulter saw all these boys coming through court and the consistent theme was that they didn't have a father. And so he got a whole lot of lawyers to step up and to mentor one boy each, and the movement kind of started from there. And then about a few years later, the Catholic nuns started up an equivalent thing for girls, and it came together as Big Brothers Big Sisters, and then came to New Zealand about 1997, 1998, and it's kind of grown across the country from there.
So is it, that was going to be a question of mine, so is it in most of the big centres, or where is it spread in New Zealand?
It's not in Dunedin. I guess we're backwards. It's not in Dunedin, it's not in Tauranga, but I would say it's in every other city of, actually it's not in Timaru either, but other than that it's in most of the cities with populations greater than 50,000. It's also in a lot of small centres like Westport and Greymouth and other very small centres have got it as well.
Yeah. So I kind of get what it's about based on what you described in terms of what you're seeking, which is to really give the kids a sense of identity and a chance to be themselves and things. But just talk us through what it is sort of on a practical level, like what are the people actually doing?
Yeah, so essentially it's about a volunteer from the community aged 18 up being matched with a child from our city who has got sort of, I'm going to say, low in confidence, low in self-esteem, probably coming from some sort of background that means they don't have many opportunities in life, and may not have many friends. And so we match them up, and that's part of our organisational role, is to both take the volunteer through a process to get them on board and trained, and get the right sort of young people using schools and social workers around the place to find those children.
Right.
So we have a list of the mentors and a list of the children, and then we match them up one by one. And then once a week they see each other, they catch up together. So some of them see each other in a school setting. They'll actually go into the school and hang out for an hour. But most of them, so we've got about 150, and probably 130 of them actually see them after school evenings and weekends, and they'll do outings together.
I see.
And the outings can be really simple. Go to the park. Margaret Mahy Park is very popular. Going to the museum, just going out for a coffee.
So what sort of ages are the children? Like what range are they?
So the children start between 6 and 12.
Okay.
And the goal of that is, there's a couple of things around that. One is you want to get in early to have a good chance of having a good long relationship and a significant impact. The second thing is there's an opening in young people around the age of 10, 11, 12, 9, 10, 11, 12, when they're just starting to open up. Their brain goes through a different stage of development then. And of course if they move into puberty, there's quite a lot of changes there. It's a really good time to get a mentor involved during that stage.
It's interesting because I thought you were going to say they're aged 14, 15, 16, like a older age, I guess is what I mean. But,
so they
but
start,
6 to 12,
that's when they
that's
start.
Quite young.
That's when they
Okay,
start.
all right.
Yeah, and they can go on for as long as they want to go on to.
I
They stay within Big Brothers Big Sisters up to potentially the age of 18, and then they kind of do their own thing after that. So our goal, as I say, is in the ideal world, someone starts when the child's about 8 or 9, and they're still going when they're 20.
Wow.
But I mean, that's a long time, and a lot of our mentors don't go anywhere near that distance. But,
so the commitment, it sounds like it's mainly a weekly get together, or
when people sign up as a volunteer, we ask them to sign up to do it weekly for 1 year.
Okay.
And then after that, we just open it up and say, well, we would love to see you with this young person for a long time, but it needs to be sustainable. And so this is where this comes back to this idea of obligation and guilt. That it's really important that volunteers at that point take ownership and go, do I want this to continue? And if I do, this is my mentoring of this child, so how am I going to make that sustainable? That might be making it fortnightly. It might mean that they bring them home for dinner quite regularly, instead of just going out and doing outings, they're going to have to have dinner anyway, so simplifying it that way. Or it might be like, I've got to go and do the grocery shopping, so I'll pick them up and they can come grocery shopping for me this week. So it's not just about entertaining the child, it's about them becoming part of your whānau and becoming part of your world, so that you can sustain it for the long term and keep making your mentoring about giving, not about obligation and guilt. So it's a challenging one, because you can imagine if you've mentored a child for a couple of years, build a really good relationship with them, and you've been doing it, say, weekly for that time, And then you're like, I'm really starting to feel the pressure at work. I don't know whether I can do weekly, but I don't want to let them down. I've been doing this, I've got this relationship with them, I don't want to let them down. I'll keep doing weekly, and you can see the pressure building and the guilt and the obligation. I've got to keep doing this. So again, part of my staff's role with the volunteers is to say to them, hey, look, just chill out. It's okay. Let's back it off. Let's make it less regular. We want this to go the long term. And we don't want you to feel obligated. We don't want you to feel good. We want you to be giving, making a choice about this volunteering. That's why you signed up. You wanted to do something positive. Let's try and keep it that way for as long as we can. Yeah, there's lots of seasons of the mentoring, like the seasons of I don't want to do this, I'm over it, and other times where it's just great, you get great feedback from the young person, or you help them through a really challenging stage in life. But other times it's mundane, as in any relationship that we have, and we're trying to again train people to not feel like their relationship has to be super good all the time. That's not realistic. Yeah.
And you mentioned training that you didn't get the first time you were starting out. So describe the training that you give to people now.
Yeah.
Because I'm always really curious about that, to unlock for the listeners, even if they never become a mentor or anything, but just to help people to learn. Because the point is, everyone's got nieces or nephews, a neighbor, somebody down the road. Like, we all have a potential role as a mentor, don't we? So I'm just curious, what are the key messages that you're getting in as these are the key things as a mentor?
Yeah, there's two things about the training that I really want to say. The first is this, that we build our program around this research study, which has become known as the Resilience Research Study. It's a longitudinal study done in Hawaii. It was a 40-year study from 1959 to 1999, and they checked in with these children to see how they'd gone on in life. And a whole lot of children had a really tough start. And really interestingly, a lot of them still did well in life, which was a pleasant surprise to the researchers, that even if they had a really tough start, they did well. And so what the research did was to look into why have these young people who've had such a tough start still done well? What is it about their life? And they worked out what they call resilience factors, the things that help the young person in the face of a tough start to still do well. And the really exciting bit within that research, as far as I'm concerned, is that normally when we think about a young person having a tough start in life, that we think that we might be able to predict their future from there. And this research says that about 1 to 2 times out of 4, and it would 25 to 50% of the time, you might guess their future right based on how they've started in life. But the resilience research said if you look at these other factors, if you can see about these other things, you can 50 to 80% accurately estimate how they're doing. So despite how they start and the tough challenges they have in life, if you can put these resilience factors in there, then you can do well. And these resilience factors are loosely categorised as internal things like independence, self-worth, being motivated to learn, generosity, a bunch of things. And then a bunch of external things, including encouraged to participate, encouraged to be good at things, good at anything, at something, encouraged to go to school, in close relationships. So by that they mean like a broad range of relationships, grandparents, uncles, aunties, communities. And the last one is nurture. And so what the research sort of said was that you put these resilience factors in, and a young person can do well, even if they have a really tough start. And so mentoring fits in really nicely with those external factors. We're encouraging a young person to participate in mentoring. They don't have to, but when they meet together once a week, the young person helps to choose what you're doing together. It's very uncommon for a young person to experience a time where someone's saying to them, hey, what do you want to do for this next hour? This is your time. They love that.
Right.
They're encouraged to go to school by their mentors. They're encouraged to be good at things, and it could simply be that their mentor just picks up on one thing that they see a young person doing well, even saying thank you, or just even how they might wash the dishes, or
just the positive reinforcement from an external source, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Exactly. Really, really significant for them in terms of the messages that they can get about their self-worth that's built up around someone saying that they're good at things. I think it's really significant that our young people they all build their confidence through the mentoring. And I'm absolutely convinced it's because this mentor is affirming, giving them positive messages about the things they are good at. but more particularly gain the confidence from just that mentor just turning up. And this is the nurture. Young people experience nurture by an adult consistently, regularly turning up.
Right.
So when we train our volunteers, we say to them, the best thing you do for a young person is to offer them nurture. The best way you do that is regularly, consistently turn up. And they just value that so much, and they feel special having this adult there. That's the first thing we tell the volunteers. The second thing is really interesting as well. It's about the idea of expectations. That with mentoring, we really believe that we're not there to fix a young person. We're not there to change their life as such. We're simply there to create an atmosphere, a context in which that young person can grow in a healthy and normal way. We all grow well in the right context, and so you just need to try and create that context for them. You don't have to get in there and try and fix and change them. So we say to our volunteers, just be really careful around any expectation you might have of mentoring this kid and thinking that you're going to solve all their problems, or you're going to help to fix them or fix them up. They may be able to do that, but I look at my life and I think, how easy is it for someone to come into my life and fix and change my life? I'm a key player in that equation. Like, it doesn't matter how good you might do your job, I'm a key player. So it's unrealistic for us to expect ourselves to be able to fix or change a young person, but we can create a caring, nurturing place for them to find themselves and to explore the world and to try things and to have, it's as simple as that for me. Just be really mindful of any expectations.
So turn up, be present, encourage, right? That's what I'm hearing, and I agree. It's just so valuable. And the thing that strikes me is, that for a young person to be given those positive reinforcements, it comes back to what we were talking about at the start. The you belong, you are important.
Yeah.
That's what ultimately it's about, isn't it?
That's the foundation.
And I guess that takes a bit of the pressure off of the mentors as well, like, because I can imagine it would be, if these kids come from difficult circumstances, it would be a potentially an emotional, like, if they have difficult situations, like taking it on board themselves. But if it's viewed as, well, I'm feeding in here the best I can, then
you're exactly right. And again, it goes back to this obligation and responsibility and guilt thing. That if you look at all the really horrible things that may be present in a young person's life, you're probably quite powerless to do a lot about it, particularly if it's stuff around their home life or things like that. It might be a family with a lot of drugs around. You can't actually, as a mentor, do much about that. And so if you weigh that too much on your own shoulders as something to sort, you're not going to be able to keep doing it. You've got to keep seeing yourself as a gift, in a sense. I keep giving myself for this time once a week to be there with this young person. There's nothing kind of really magical about what that's achieving. You're just consistently, regularly turning up, and that's what you offer. Because what we know is the kids, as you say, they're so variable in terms of their backgrounds. So you might have what we might call a really outstanding character with a really difficult child who makes no progress as the world might see it, in terms of fixing them. And then you might have a child who makes great leaps and bounds, and the mentor is just not doing a lot. So you can't gauge the success of the mentor on the success of the child. We have to measure our success as volunteers on our ability to regularly, consistently turn up and be present and be encouraging. That's the goal.
And I think as well, thinking back to the guy who influenced you, like, it might be decades that you find out for this child that everybody kind of wrote off and thought there was no impact. And then you find out 30 years from now, and they look back on their life and they reflect and they think, you know what? Those sessions, even for that 1 year when I was 9 years old, that had a profound impact. And the person who was the mentor may be no longer even around, but you won't know the impact in a easily tick the box financial sort of way until a long time from now.
That's a real challenge to so many social service groups is the fact that the work that we do is not necessarily able to be easily measured because of the unknown long-term nature of it. We just don't know. It's too hard to study unless you have the phenomenal amounts of money to do these longitudinal research studies. But no, you're right. You never quite know. And there's a really great phrase that, in fact, there's two really great phrases that come out of the States in terms of mentoring, Big Brothers, Big Sisters. One of them is this idea of starting something. They say with mentoring, actually what you're doing is you're just starting something. You have no idea whether you're starting in their life or your own life even, but you're starting something and you don't know where it's going to go. But don't worry about where it's going. Just know that by getting involved in doing this volunteering, that you could just start something in this young person's life. I just highlighted there the idea that it might be starting something in a volunteer's mind as well. Volunteers get a huge amount out of mentoring, and some of them do a lot of personal growth and development through it. Many of them see poverty for the first time in their lives, and they have to deal with the fact that they are powerless to be able to change this child's life in one sense, but they can give them a break, a rest from that challenging life, and give them something that they really love, so they can do that. So it's a hugely rewarding experience for them, and almost all of them tell us, when I came into this, or they use this sort of language, when I came into this, I thought I was doing this for the young person, and now I realise I wonder whether I get more out of it than the young person does.
Gives a different perspective, right? And sometimes we need that as adults too. You get into the rhythms of life and things. Yeah. What we'll do is in the show notes we'll put some links so that people who are interested can click and find out more. Okay. And I presume there'll be a Facebook page and all that stuff. Yeah. So, but the other thing that really strikes me for the people who are listening, whether or not they end up being involved in this, is who are those young people in your life that you could reach out to and you could be the mentor for. And it might be that kid next door who's kind of annoying and keeps throwing the ball over the fence, but you could be consistently talking with them and how's it going, how's school going. And then the other thing is, the flip side of all this is that each of us probably could do with some mentors, whether you're 8 or 38 or 68. And I think that's something that our society doesn't value enough. And so it's good to emphasize it. Like for me, I've got at least 3 people who I would consider mentors who are above me, who some of them know, like I've told them, I want this relationship, I need you to call me, ask me how I'm actually doing. And also then, who below me can I be that mentor for? Well,
it's interesting, you've talked about being a little bit intentional with yourself and being able to name them, and I've been able to do the same for myself in terms of name people who are in that role. But as you say, it's not that common for people to do that, and I think, as you say, the really grounding thing for this for people listening is not so much even our program, because it may be out of reach for them to be able to do volunteering, but as you say, is that reflection in your own life about the up and down, and the different sorts of mentors that we might want as well in our own lives. Like you can have mentors around different parts of your life, of course. I know that's obvious, but making sure there is someone who you can be vulnerable with and can be honest with. That, I think that's the critical one, because again, when we go back to these foundations, we're talking about, is there a place where we don't have to hide, where we can just be ourselves, and we don't feel like we've got to cover up some of the things that we might be a bit ashamed about. We can say them. Now, we maybe not be 100% open with people. I think that's it's hard to hide, our darkest thoughts we may not want to share, but you know what I mean, the idea.
I get it, and the answer, how are you, the most common answer I hear is, I'm really busy, and I hate that answer because there's so much that we could talk about there, but there's always something, like we said before, there's something going on underneath, and if you can be open and talk about it, then it's got to be a good thing.
It starts with that being vulnerable yourself, doesn't it? And that's interesting you talk about that question, because I agree that's the most frustrating answer is I'm busy, and I love to throw back at everybody, as you might be the same, to say, I'm not so busy at the moment, just to confuse them, like, that must be different. But to be able to also say it's when you are struggling, rather than saying I'm busy, which just seems like almost a shutdown, doesn't it? Because we're all busy. But more to say, I'm actually struggling with anxiety, or I'm losing a bit of sleep at the moment. I'm really struggling with that.
Yeah.
You know, that it has to start with being vulnerable yourself. And that's the only way that others then feel that permission, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I did a whole episode on this idea of slowing down, and with Kit Hendon, if people are interested, about 2 years ago now, and we had half an hour talking about being too busy, or are you too busy? Yeah. And the thing I find interesting when you start unpacking, if people are willing to actually talk, and then you find, okay, you're really, really busy, and then it's, oh yeah, I was binge watching this TV show, you know, like, and I'm thinking, busy is different, isn't it? Like, you know, but that's the ultimate gift, is everyone has 24 hours in a day, whether you're Bill Gates or you're the man walking on the road, you know, each of us have that gift of time, and how are we going to use it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's right. And then confronting the things that make it hard for us to not make the best use of it. You know, 24 hours and you can go, well, I need to sleep for 8 and whatever, fill up the other 16. Well, why do I spend 4 or 5 or 6 hours binge watching? Like, why am I doing that? Because it's not necessarily just a laziness. It could be, you know, I just need to escape. What are you escaping from here that makes you need to do that, you know?
Yeah, I agree. And if people are interested in finding out more, do you ever run sort of introductory sort of sessions or talks, or is the website the best place?
Yeah, the website's the best place to do it. We do the introduction things in person, so if you go through our website, you can just contact us through there, and we just arrange a time to see you one-on-one. Essentially, more than anything, we're trying to say to people, you know, the way that we operate is one-to-one. So come and see us one-to-one, and we'll tell you a bit about what it's all about. And we really don't oversell mentoring, because we know it can't be for everyone because of the commitment and the demands, but also just that stuff around obligation and guilt. We just don't want. We actually turn people down if we sense they're coming into this for the wrong reason.
Right. So what would be an example of a wrong reason?
Well, the wrong reason is about this idea of someone saying, "Oh, you know, someone's told me I have to do this, or I'll be really good at this, and so I guess I should do it."
Right.
We'd immediately go, "Hang on. That might
it's not the active choice to.
It's not. You might sustain you for 6 months, but that's not.
Yeah, you're going to give up playing piano after.
Give a balance, right? So, and we certainly find it easy to turn people down who are too busy as well. We want people who are coming in for the right reasons, because that's what we believe will sustain them in making an intentional choice to help a young person. And a lot of our relationships, the average relationship lasts about 3 to 4 years, and some of them go 10, 11 years, and so there's some really long ones that happen. And there's a great ease that comes in mentoring relationships over time. I mentor a boy who's he's not a boy now, he's 21, and just when we see each other now, like, we don't see each other nearly as often anymore, but when we do, there's just such a bond between us that's it's never going to be broken. It does feel like, I mean, I'm not a big fan of the word stepson, but like, he feels like that to me. Like,
you've been with him through a lot. It's probably
12 years. That we've known each other for 12 years, and for the early part of that, it was every week. Catching up, doing baking together and playing games together and things like that, and then over time it just kind of changed into a really easy relationship that I don't really care. I don't really care, it's the wrong language. He might have a whole lot of bad stuff go down in his life, and even of his own choice, but it doesn't make me feel like a failure as a mentor. I just want him to know that I'm there regardless. That's the goal, is not that we're here to fix these kids, but that they know that someone's got their back.
And I guess even at 21, he might call you and say, "Hey, I need some help," or "I'm not sure what to do. What do you think?"
It's particularly, I think, just that, you know the language we often talk about, the people who are really close to us, the people who are there for us. And when we actually think, how often do we see those people? It may not be that often, but it's the idea that they're there that gives us the courage.
You know, I think as well, for me, because I grew up in New Zealand, but my grandparents were overseas, but I always knew that they existed and that they loved me. I mean, of course, they sent me cards, and, and we did see them, like, we'd have Christmas and stuff, but it was always this presence of my grandmother, my grandfather, I didn't see them every day, but I did know that they were there. It's kind of like that, isn't it?
It's a knowing, isn't it? That's right. That's right.
Yeah, that's really great. Well, we've got people listening from across New Zealand, but also Australia, America, the UK, like all over. So if people are interested, I presume there will be these local sort of chapters that they, because we're here in Christchurch, but there might be someone in Auckland or Wellington or whatever, so they can find the local.
It's all on the Big Brothers Big Sisters website, and certainly, I mean, it's huge in the States. It's not in the UK, but it's across about 20 odd countries around the world.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Well, thank you so much for coming in, because as a cricket fan, there's cricket happening right now as we're talking, right? So you're actually sacrificing to be here.
It wasn't a good start for the Black Caps, so
wasn't it? Okay.
Probably not worth watching.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Oh, well, but I do appreciate it, and particularly, I love hearing your story from the beginning, and thank you for being vulnerable and sharing about your own teenage years, because I can see where that then led you into what you studied, led you into your work, and also this idea of mentoring and the valuable role that adults and it can play for young people. I think people would be really interested in it. So thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Stephen. Appreciate it.
No problem. Great.